It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. I'm Matt Barbet. Coming up, a drink driver doing more than 140 miles an hour and using his phone is jailed for killing a baby and his aunt. 8-month-old Zachary Blades was thrown from his mum's car and killed instantly, along with 30-year-old Carleen Warner. Daryl Anderson had been drinking on a plane on his way home from a holiday. He took a photo of his speedometer just seconds before the crash, with the collision detection warning lit up on his dashboard. Also tonight, with the new government bringing an end to the Rwanda plan, how should the UK deal with asylum seekers? It's a pressing issue for Keir Starmer, with a report out today describing conditions at one detention centre as the worst that inspectors have ever seen. Plus, an important reset. The new health secretary gets straight to work with a first meeting with junior doctors to try to bring an end to their strike action. And we'll find out why police officers are up in arms about a new ITV comedy. All that to come and more here on the UK Tonight. Good evening. There can't be any driver who doesn't know the devastation that speeding can cause, or using a mobile at the wheel, or being over the limit. When Daryl Anderson got into his Audi SUV after flying back from holiday in May, he did all three, and the consequences were truly sickening. After drinking during the plane journey, he hit speeds of more than 140 miles per hour before ploughing into the back of a smaller Peugeot on the A1 near Durham. His accelerator pedal was pressed fully to the floor, and he didn't brake before slamming into the back of his victim's vehicle. 8-month-old Zachary Blades and his auntie, Carleen Warner, were killed instantly. And Zachary's mother, who was driving the car, told the court today that she is a broken shell of a woman. Anderson has been jailed for more than 17 years, as our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, reports.
Zachary Blades was just 8 months old when he died because of a man, a judge said, who'd played Russian roulette with the lives of others. Daryl Anderson had already been drinking excessively on a plane when he drove out of Newcastle Airport on May the 31st. He took a photo of his dashboard showing he was driving at 141 miles per hour, moments before he crashed into the car carrying Zachary and his aunt Carleen. Both were killed.
I've just got back off holiday.
Have you had anything to drink?
Pardon?
Have you had anything alcoholic drink?
I had a little bit to drink on plane.
So that's a fail. You've gone 95. All right. So you're further arrested on suspicion of drink driving. All right. Same caution applies.
What's
95. The legal limit's 35.
Is it?
Yeah.
I drove into the back of another car. Yeah. Now, sometimes mistakes happen, but I'm not a bad person.
Police found an empty vodka bottle in the wreckage of his Audi. Zachary's mum found her son's body on the other side of the road.
No one should have to go through what we've gone through, and if we can stop that next person, make them think twice, then we've done some good, and Carleen and Zach's lives were more than that. So please join us now in our justice for Zachary and Carleen. And we will not stop. I will fight every single day that I'm on this earth for them. Thank you.
Anderson was sentenced to 17 years in prison. The judge told him what he did that night made a fatal accident inevitable.
For his actions, Anderson will now spend a considerable amount of time in prison. But it is his victims and family who have been handed the life sentences today.
Zachary's loss, his mum said, had left an irreparable hole in her heart. A night, she says, she relives over and over, and a little boy's future, and a life together, stolen. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Next, the new government's decision to get rid of the Rwanda plan has started another new conversation about how the UK tackles immigration, how to stop small boat crossings, and what to do about the people who are already here. A new report has laid bare these shortcomings in the system right now, with inspectors describing conditions at a detention centre in West London as the worst they have ever seen. Officials paint a picture of chaos at Harmondsworth Immigration Removal Centre, including violence, drug taking and several suicide attempts. Our communities correspondent Becky Johnson has more.
Just weeks ago, going in here came with a risk of being detained for Rwanda. But the Prime Minister's promise to scrap the scheme was confirmed in the High Court, just as these asylum seekers were turning up for routine appointments at this Home Office building in West London.
It's very nice news for us, for our asylum in this country.
Omar from Sudan had been warned he could be sent to Rwanda. So had this Afghan woman who came by small boat to the UK last year.
I feel happy now because they have cancelled it and I'm no more worried about it. I don't know what is going to happen next, but I hope so they will give us documents.
The Rwanda plan had left tens of thousands of people in limbo, unable to claim asylum in the UK, but not knowing if or when they'd be sent to Rwanda, living indefinitely in Home Office-funded accommodation. Now the new government has scrapped the plan, people are still waiting to find out what happens next and how long the process will take. In the High Court, a government lawyer confirmed no one will be put on planes. But groups representing asylum seekers urged the Home Office to say what it does plan to do.
In terms of people whose claims are still not being considered, we want them to now withdraw all the notices of intent and consider everybody's claims here in the UK.
We asked the Home Office how many people's claims will now be processed. We're still waiting for their response. Still, new arrivals keep coming across the channel. Today, dozens of men, women and children adding to the record numbers who've made the journey since the start of this year, led away to join the thousands still waiting to know their futures. It's as the strains on the system were laid bare, a report detailing chaos at Harmondsworth Immigration Detention Centre near Heathrow. Inspectors found violence and drug abuse were rife, and numerous detainees had attempted suicide. The former Conservative Home Secretary criticised for failing to respond to concerns raised.
We found conditions which were among the worst we've ever seen. I've been doing this job for the best part of 20 years, and I've never been to a centre where conditions had deteriorated so much.
The new government said it's vital detentions and removals are carried out with dignity and respect. The challenge for them is how to fix an asylum system that most would agree is broken. Becky Johnson, Sky News.
So, with the Rwanda plan gone, what should, if anything, take its place? How should the government potentially deter people from entering the UK illegally? And what care should it give to those who are already here? We're going to talk about this now with Lou Calvi, who's Director at Asylum Matters, and also Mike Jones, the Executive Director at Migration Watch. Good evening to you both. Lou, first, the system, I mean, I think most people would agree the system right now is just in an awful state. Just remind people how bad it's got, because we've heard about Harmondsworth, of course. What's it like around the rest of the country?
Good evening, and thanks very much for having me on. It's horrendous. Pretty much daily, we're fighting to stop people from taking their lives. Suicide has become a real feature in the asylum system, as has exploitation. Talking about sexual, criminal, labour exploitation. The closure of the asylum system and the refusal of government under the Illegal Migration Act to process asylum claims has essentially warehoused people in an unending legal limbo. There's no light at the end of the tunnel for people. Don't forget they're legally prevented from working. And then threatened with detention and arrest. The Rwanda arrests really frightened people. And it led to a lot of people going into really dangerous situations with a view to trying to protect themselves from arrest. So from a humanitarian perspective, it is catastrophic what government has done to the asylum system.
Mike, let me get your point of view on this, because regardless of how people have got here, why they're here, or whether they should be here at all, what Lou just described, it sounds inhumane.
Well, I think detention centres should be in ship shape and obviously provide robust accommodation for people who have come here. But at the end of the day, you know, whose interests are we prioritising here? Should it be the interests of illegal migrants who have collaborated with gangs who have engaged in all sorts of illicit activities and failed to claim asylum in a safe country, or should we prioritise the interests of the British people? And, you know, my response to this is quite simple. We should prioritise the interests of the British people. And ultimately, we need an asylum system that detains and deports.
Yeah, which was kind of my point, really. As I said, it's regardless of how they came here, what they're doing here, whether they should be here, the system as it exists at the moment is inhumane. In fact, it's not really working for anybody if you want to talk about British people, Mike.
Well, it's working for those who arrive illegally. The system is working great for those people, and it's working very well for the people traffickers. So that's not entirely correct what you're saying. If you want the system to function efficiently, then you need to amend or abolish the Human Rights Act, and you need various returns agreements with countries of origin, as well as agreements with third safe countries like Rwanda. Ultimately, if you're going to solve this, you need to make the people traffickers model economically irrational. And you do that by detaining and deporting those who arrive illegally via the channel or through other clandestine means.
Just let me finish off before I come back to you, Lou. You mean withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights and therefore the European Court of Human Rights? Is that what you're saying, Mike?
You need to amend or abolish the Human Rights Act because the European Convention of Human Rights is embedded within that legislation. And obviously, the ECHR makes it very difficult to construct returns agreements because of what they call the principle of non-refoulement. So you would need to amend or abolish the Human Rights Act.
Lou, over to you.
Thank you. Firstly, I reject the proposition that the interests of people seeking asylum and interests of public are somehow opposed. Our current system costs us a fortune, and we continually refuse people the right to work. That's what they want to do. It's not working very well for people that have come here to seek safety. They're surviving on around £8.50 a week. And that's why a lot of them are going into exploitation, trafficking, slavery. And that ultimately has a huge cost to us as a society, but it also has a direct cost to our taxpayer. I think when it comes to ECHR, it's simply untrue that it prevents return agreements. The principle of non-refoulement says that you can't return a refugee to dangerous situations, and that's under the Refugee Convention.
Yeah.
That's something that broadly the British public supports. We are a country that supports refugees. Everyone I speak to wants to settle refugees.
Lou, let me just come in there because, I mean, this is the sticking point with the Rwanda plan. People who are for the Rwanda plan would rightly say, well, of course, we can't send people back to dangerous places and we can't keep them here, so they need to go somewhere else. How do you solve that conundrum? You can't send them back, you can't keep them here. What do you do?
You can keep them here. We can keep them here. What we need to do is have systems and structures that enable people to thrive in the UK. Remind ourselves that actually last year, we only resettled 736 refugees in a whole year. So that's essentially the only 736 people got a safe pathway to the UK in the attack on Gaza, the Sudanese war. Our commitment to refugees is appalling. And that's why people are coming on small boats.
Let me just come in, Lou, and Mike, I will come back to you again in a second. People seeking genuine asylum from dangerous places that are war-torn, like you say, Syria or Afghanistan or other places. I think you'd say a lot of people would rightly want them processed quickly, and if they deserve to be here and deserve asylum, they therefore get asylum. The problem, it seems to be, is everyone's being mixed up into one. You don't actually know who's in the asylum system because things are just not being processed, as you just mentioned.
We do know the nationalities that are in the asylum system, and we broadly know the nationalities on small boats. So the top nationalities on small boats at the moment are Afghan nationals, unsurprising given that we're not resettling any Afghans that we promised to. They're Syrian nationals Sudan is the biggest nationality group on biggest rising nationality group on small boats. So around 2/3 to 3/4 of the people crossing on small boats are from refugee situations.
But let me just finish off, Lou, because at Sky we've reported on Vietnamese people being trafficked all the way and being victims of gangs as well. Mike, I'm going to come back to you for this, and we are almost out of time, so I can't give everybody the final words. I'm going to have to give it to you, Mike, obviously. Just respond to what Lou was saying there, because I saw you were shaking your head in some of that.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at refugee flows historically, you look at the peer-reviewed academic data from the United Nations, they're a mixed multitude, to quote a word from the book of Leviticus. You've got kids, you've got middle-aged people, you've got men and women, finely balanced, you've got uncles, aunties. But what you're seeing across the channel is predominantly young men. They've dealt with people traffickers, people involved in the most disgusting organised crime you can imagine. They failed to claim asylum in a safe country such as France. They're basically would-be economic migrants.
But Mike, people have the right to claim asylum in the country they want to claim asylum in. They don't have to do it at the first port of call. They're entitled to claim asylum here. And let me just come back at you. They have to come all the way here to do it. They can't claim asylum by going into an embassy somewhere, can they? Maybe people should be processed at that point.
Well, if you look at the United Nations data, the vast majority of refugees claim asylum in the country that's closest to them, and that makes a lot of sense because it takes a lot of energy, and it's very dangerous to move very far away from where you live. But these people are economic migrants, vast majority of them, and they're abusing our hospitality, they're violating our laws, and they're dealing with extremely disgusting groups of people, like the people traffickers. So they need to be detained, they need to be deported.
I wouldn't be surprised if you both agreed on the issue with the traffickers, because that is organised crime, and we know that is something that the new Labour government is seeking to address. We know that they haven't talked about a deterrent, whether it would be something akin to Rwanda or something entirely different. This is also a discussion that could go on all evening. I'm afraid we are out of time. But Mike, Lou, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak did switch places today as the new Parliament sat for the first time since Thursday's election. Labour took to the government benches for the first time in 14 years on what was a largely ceremonial day. But for the Conservatives, the clean-up operation from their worst ever election result got underway. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, reports.
This is what victory looks like. Overflowing government benches and newbie Labour MPs in the gangways rubbing shoulders with the cabinet. After a record win, a Prime Minister who can afford to look gracious. All sides backing the re-election of this man, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, to continue as the 158th Commons Speaker, overseeing a new Parliament that looks very different.
The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.
We have the opportunity and the responsibility to put an end to a politics that has too often seemed self-serving and self-obsessed.
The Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak.
This man's still facing the same opponent, and he will be for some time to come, according to the rules of the leadership contest released today.
Let me begin with a message to those who are no longer sitting behind me. I am sorry. We have lost too many diligent, community-spirited representatives.
Nigel Farage.
On a day of consensus, one man sought the limelight with a personal attack.
You have brought tremendous dignity to the role as Speaker, and it is, I must say, in marked contrast to the little man that was there before you and besmirched the office so dreadfully.
Over the road in Downing Street, England's mayors gathered with good intentions and plans for collaboration. 10 of these faces Labour. One, Tees Valley Mayor Ben Houchen, a Conservative who just days ago was the face of levelling up.
But congratulations.
Today, congratulating the Deputy Prime Minister hours after she axed the name levelling up from her government department. More areas to get mayors, more powers for existing mayors. That means more demands in the in-tray of the Prime Minister, including on issues you thought had been settled.
It's not about going back to HS2, though, Kay. We accept that has gone. What it is about doing is having an alternative to the West Coast Main Line when those HS2 trains start running between London and Birmingham.
How you reimagine the health.
Across town, a man who knows how it's done, hosting a conference and making clear government isn't easy.
Sitting around the cabinet table, thinking I had this huge majority, and thinking, well, since I'm the Prime Minister, if I say something should happen, something's going to happen. Nothing happened.
His successor has promised change. Don't expect it to be completely smooth.
So he's got the experience, he's had the time in opposition, really no excuses for getting it wrong.
They're always going to be. But look, we didn't get everything right. This government won't get everything right, but the important thing is you get more things right than wrong.
Unity in Westminster. Next stop, Washington, for bonding with world leaders, building goodwill while he can. Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Still to come here on the UK Tonight. The atmosphere is already building in Dortmund as England make final preparations for their semi-final Euros clash tomorrow. A new TV show is causing outrage in the police community. Find out why. And also why researchers want wild swimmers to help them trace pollution, get this, by studying their poo.
So we're very excited at Square Cut, the production company I formed when I left Sky, because we think that America's really going to embrace cricket. They did very well in the recent World Cup. They made it through to the final 8. They beat Pakistan, and they're a coming force. And going on at the moment is a tournament called the MLC, Major League Cricket. It's a league made up of the likes of San Francisco, Washington, Seattle. 6 clubs play each other, then there's a knockout round, and by the end of July, there's a World Cup. And we're producing a podcast, US Cricket Daily, available on Amazon and Spotify and Apple, TikTok, Instagram, where you can look back on the day's play, and we look forward to the next day's game. Cricket is coming to America in a big way.
Do they understand it?
Yeah, they do. In fact...
Because when you're out, you're in, and when you're in, you're out.
America played Canada in September 1844, 30 years before England played Australia.
Oh, OK.
America was ahead of the game, as they are in so many ways. They'd give them a run for the money on a good day. They've got some good players. And the big thing about the MLC, the Major League Cricket Tournament, is the players come from all over the world. They've got the likes of Pat Cummins, the Australian captain playing at the moment for the San Francisco team. Ponting is the coach of the Washington team. They're attracting good players. It's going to be an exciting league. T20 is the fastest growing format of cricket around the globe.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolution. It's our job to try to make sense of it all.
OK, now less than 24 hours to go until England face the Netherlands in the semi-finals of the Euros. The game will take place in Dortmund, where the atmosphere is already building among fans. Our sports presenter, Jackie Beltrao, is there.
Both sets of fans are arriving in Dortmund knowing their team are just one game away from the final. There's a lot of orange, and with Holland just 2 hours drive away, it's expected England fans will be outnumbered 4-1. But as the England manager took final questions ahead of his team's third major semi-final in 4 tournaments, he recalled his own happy memories of beating the Dutch at Euro '96.
Our fans, whether there are more or less, will make themselves heard, I'm sure, and it will be a brilliant, colourful occasion because, you know, my memories of playing against Holland with the orange in the stadium are really vivid. So, in the end, the players want to play in those sorts of occasions.
The full squad trained together, and Southgate was giving no clues as to who would start. But after their quarter-finals penalty win, it seems confidence is not an issue.
As we've been doing better and getting better in the tournaments, the expectation gets higher, and that's been no different. So, yeah, I think people will use it in different ways. Some will use it as motivation to, you know, up their game and up their level. Some will just block it out and, you know, just focus on what they need to do.
England, England, England.
Southgate knows that if he can get this team a blend of youth and experience to finally click, to finally put in an all-round performance, he will silence the critics. They will also silence some 80,000 fans in this city and be a step closer to a second consecutive Euros final.
Things can only get better. Have you been disappointed so far?
I wouldn't say disappointed. We got to the semi-finals, but it can definitely be better, the calibre of players we've got.
We've somehow managed to make it for every stage without meaning to, so we've not been playing our best and we've somehow managed to do it.
Holland will win.
Why are you so confident? England have good players.
We have good players. So I'm confident. We will win.
With tickets at a premium, many of these fans won't even get into the stadium. But like the millions watching at home, they'll be hoping the team can get the job done anyway at all. Jackie Beltrao, Sky News, Dortmund.
Still to come on the UK tonight. Bullying, racism and burnout, a completely damning report into the dysfunctional culture at the UK's independent regulator for nurses and midwives. And the new health secretary meets union leaders in hopes of resolving the junior doctors' disputes. Let's carry on looking ahead to tomorrow night's England game with the Netherlands at the Euros. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris is live in Dortmund now. Evening to you, Rob. Is the atmosphere building even this far out?
Yeah, a lot of England fans here, and particularly the Dutch starting to arrive, although a slightly easier trip for them. You can be there in an hour and a half from the Netherlands to here, so that's perhaps a reminder why the England fans could be outnumbered by the huge wall of orange in the Dortmund Stadium tomorrow night as England prepare for their third semi-final under Gareth Southgate. And some people perhaps might get used to this level of consistent performance at major tournaments, but of all the 7 semi-finals that England have ever reached as a men's team, 3 have been delivered by Gareth Southgate. And perhaps that's why, when we've been hearing from him today, there's still that sort of sense of him wanting to highlight what an achievement it is reaching this far. He's talked about the changing of the mindset and how they're not playing with that fear anymore. Although he thinks in the group stage here, perhaps the weight of the expectation to deliver was weighing heavily on the players. The fact that they only won the 1 match in the group stage, drew the other 2. But whatever Gareth Southgate's doing, it is eventually working. The games haven't been pretty. They've been grinding out results, scraping through, but they are here into the last 4 with perhaps some welcome selection questions for Gareth Southgate. He's got Mark Gay in defence back from suspension, so does Konza retain his place or not after making such an assured tournament first start for him in that victory over Switzerland when England showed that perhaps they might have conquered penalties by those flawless spot kicks that have secured this passage through in Germany to face the Netherlands. One wider issue that was being talked about at the press conference, something that's been hanging over this fixture, is the choice of referee for this match. Now, we're accustomed perhaps to managers often grumbling about who the referee is, but this referee has a particular history with Jude Bellingham because when Bellingham was playing here for Borussia Dortmund, he actually highlighted Felix Zweier's previous match-fixing ban back in 2005 when a decision went against Dortmund's way against Bayern Munich. So the questions have been raised about whether he's the right person to be referee for this match, but Gareth Southgate said they're not thinking about who the choice of referee is at all, clearly trying to distance England away from that particular episode that's being raised around what is a huge moment, of course, for the England team through to yet another semi-final, trying to reach a second consecutive men's final and going 1 stage further than they did against Italy in 2021 by actually winning the trophy.
Interesting twist with the ref, though, Rob. Thank you very much indeed. It kicks off at 8 tomorrow night, of course, but so do we. So if you don't like football, keep it with the UK Tonight here on Sky News, of course. Now, after saying the NHS is broken on his first day in the job, the new Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, must surely have one of the most pressing and immediate tasks of anyone in the new cabinet, finding a resolution to the junior doctors' dispute. That process apparently began today with a first meeting with union leaders, Mr Streeting calling it an important reset and doctors saying it is a positive first step. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has more.
A new vision for the NHS from a new health secretary. Better health outcomes, driving economic growth.
We will help you achieve your mission for growth and improve the prosperity and lives of everyone in this country by making sure that we are with you lockstep in driving growth. That is a big shift in mindset.
That's the future. The present has problems that need to be urgently addressed. One of the most pressing, the first talks with junior doctors.
We're happy to have those conversations. We've never once walked out of the room, and we never will. We want to continue talking, and that's what we've agreed to. We've agreed to a meeting next week.
Underpaid! The new government says it will drive down waiting lists, but it can't do that without resolving this dispute, and quickly. In public, both sides are urging patience. They say this is a process which will take some time, but in private, they know that the clock is already ticking. The BMA's mandate for strike action expires in September, which means that if they wanted to continue with industrial action, they'll have to ballot their members in August, and that is next month. And this is why it matters. Mary has been waiting over 2 years for knee replacement surgery.
I can only walk for a few minutes as well. The pain in my knee and my back just, well, I start crying with it. There's lots of people in my position all waiting in this long waiting list that never ends.
Wes Streeting has already met dentist leaders and been to see GPs to learn more about the problems in primary care. Health leaders, though, warn they must be involved in his plans to fix the NHS.
There has to be a level of patience and of understanding, but crucially of making sure we're putting the plans in place for the medium to longer term.
Mary and millions of patients like her will share the new health secretary's concerns, but now they want his words to be turned into action, and soon. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
The problems do not end there with the doctors for the Health Secretary, as a damning report has described a dysfunctional culture at the UK's independent regulator for nurses and midwives, with staff suffering bullying, racism and burnout. Former Chief Prosecutor Nazir Afzal, who wrote the report, found poor judgment and toxic behaviours are affecting decision-making at the Nursing and Midwifery Council, putting the public at risk and endangering nurses and midwives. Joining me to talk about this is the former Chief Crown Prosecutor of the CPS for North West England and author of the report I mentioned there, Nazir Afzal. Nazir, good evening to you. To say you found it to be dysfunctional is almost an understatement. Some of the stuff was frankly horrific.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that. What we were able to do is listen to hundreds and hundreds of staff. Many of them had never spoken about their experiences. We provided them with a safe space to do so, and I'm delighted and I'm really honoured that they engaged with us on that. We spoke to former staff, we spoke to chief nursing officers and others to get an understanding of what the Nursing and Midwifery Council is today. For your viewers, you need to know the Nursing and Midwifery Council basically carries out investigations into complaints against nurses and midwives and decides whether to, in effect, prosecute them, and ultimately they could be struck off, for example. What we found, Matt, was that these cases invariably take years. Now, when I was a prosecutor, if a case took a year, I'd be very concerned. But we ran into cases that were 6 or 7 or 8 years long. And what was happening was that good nurses were finding themselves being investigated, often for very minor offences or no offences, but because it was taking so long, it became very Kafkaesque. And bad nurses were escaping sanction. They were often continuing to work despite the fact they faced very serious misconduct.
What you're talking about there is people facing allegations of rape and sexual assault and being in possession of child pornography. But incredibly, because they did it on their own time, it was somehow disregarded.
I mean, it's horrific. And the good news is that's been changed immediately. But you're absolutely right. We found a case of a male nurse that had category A child sex abuse images, and category A is the worst possible. You would go to prison for several years for that. And the NMC, as it was then, decided in relation to this person, it happened in their private life and therefore it wasn't relevant. You mentioned the rape case. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody was accused of rape in 2017 and it took 7 years for that person, only this year, to be struck off. And again, initially the view was, oh, it happened in their private life. Well, you don't stop being a predator at the door of your office or door of your workplace. And that was a nonsense. But that's the reality, is that they had rules in place. They did have rules in place, quite frankly, which made no sense. And then the cases I just mentioned, they take forever anyway. It really was something shocking for me. I mean, I've seen the worst that human beings can do to each other as a chief prosecutor. And what I was struck by was some of the people that spoke to us, Matt, were distraught. I mean, I'm telling you,
understandably,
absolutely, they were scared, but they were also really shocked by what they experienced.
Yeah, look, people will wonder how on earth that was allowed to happen. We've seen recently with inquiries happening that then criminal proceedings can potentially follow suit. Could that happen here?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we've made 36 recommendations, all of which have been accepted by the NMC. There are some senior leaders within the NMC. As I mentioned, there's been a lot of change. We went in February, and since February, they brought in, for example, that rule about it doesn't matter whether it happens in your private life. They brought in a significant amount of rules around how they treat their own staff, which they didn't have before. So they've done things now which they hadn't done previously. What's troubling for me is that there have been reports going right back to 2008 about issues that the NMC need to address, and of course they addressed them for a little while, and then they hope that people have forgotten about them. So this is a real opportunity for them to say, right, as they have done, we accept everything that Nazir in his report says. We will action them. We'll take advantage of the recommendations. And the important thing is the government keeps an eye on things. The new government knows about what we've said with them, and they need to make sure that progress is made.
Yeah, look, we'll hear a statement from the NMC in a second, but final question to you, Nazir. One of the things was this sort of groupthink causing problems, people being afraid to disagree and somehow ending up all thinking the same. Is there a risk that that kind of groupthink has spread elsewhere? You said you'd seen the worst of humanity in your job prosecuting.
Yeah.
Is there a risk that this kind of thing is happening in other organisations?
100%. Just today, Matt, since the report's been published, I've been getting emails via my website and other sources telling me, please, Nazir, look at the General Medical Council. Please, Nazir, look at this, that, and the other. Organisation after organisation. It's a credit, strangely, to the NMC that they brought us in to have a look at things, and they've responded. Other organisations are hoping, I think, that not me, but that nobody will look at them. Because the infected blood scandal, Hillsborough, Grenfell, post office scandals, all of these are a failure of regulation, and we need to make sure that regulations fit for purpose. And again, my request to the government is that they prioritise this, because at the end of the day, all of us are the beneficiaries of all of these services. There are 800,000 nurses and midwives. There are tens of millions of patients. We need the best service, and whatever responsibility that a provider has, it needs to be regulated properly. And I'm concerned right now that they aren't.
It's another thing for their long to-do list. Nazir Afzal, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. As I said there, the NMC chair, Sir David Warren, has responded to Nazir's report. He said, I am extremely sorry to hear the testimony of NMC colleagues who shared their distressing experiences of racism, discrimination or bullying. On behalf of the Council, I give my absolute assurance that addressing this will be front and centre of change at the NMC. I also apologise to those nurses, midwives, nursing associates, employers and members of the public for whom we have taken far too long to reach fitness to practice decisions. Nazir Afzal's recommendations, together with our existing improvement plan, will make the step change in experience they expect and deserve. Well, next, police leaders have described the title of a new ITV comedy as highly offensive and disgusting. The show, which follows recruits at a police training centre, is called Piglets, an apparent reference to the term pig, which has long been used as a derogatory slang term for a police officer. ITV says the title is not intended to cause any offence and is a comedic and endearing play on words. So let's find out what policing commentator Graham Wetton thinks. Graham, good to see you. Have you ever been called a pig?
Yes, in an offensive and derogatory manner on duty, outside pubs, clubs, etc. So it isn't endearing. It wasn't taken as being endearing. It is a highly offensive term. Everybody knows that. So for a reputable channel like ITV to title a new show, albeit a comedy, there's an old adage in police: if you can't take a joke, you shouldn't have joined. This, for me, goes beyond the joke, though. Most police officers can take a joke, but this isn't a joke. It's derogatory and offensive. And highlighting new in service officers, albeit in a comedy show, I don't think it helps the service at all, or society.
I mean, there are plenty of police procedurals that don't ever show coppers in a good light. Bent coppers, crooked coppers, all sorts of, every which way under the sun, of course. So why is this title? And it's not pigs, it's piglets. Granted, it seems to be a reference to that derogatory term, but why is that so much more offensive than how police are actually portrayed?
I think because the term has been used in a derogatory and offensive manner previously. You know, most people in society, if you mention pigs, they would take it as being offensive. It's not meant in a joking manner or a humorous manner. You know, even the term coppers doesn't quite reflect the organisation of the service, but everybody's called coppers, and the old bill, the fuzz, etc., etc. There's loads of slang terms for police officers, but pigs has always been intended to be offensive and derogatory, and I think that's the problem with this. It's a derivation of pigs to piglets. It's about new in-service officers. There's an issue in society at the moment with police not being respected for a number of reasons, but the number of assaults on officers is increasing year on year. And I think that's partly because of this lack of respect. And I think a title like this, for a show like this, even if it's a comedy, and we get it's supposed to be jokey, the show can be jokey, but the title itself, I think, is offensive.
Trust in police, faith in police officers is not a particularly high level right now because of obviously recent scandals, which of course does not reflect on the vast majority of well-serving, well-meaning police officers. Does this just compound that feeling that police officers are not particularly popular, however good a job they might think they're doing?
Well, I think it does, but I think it just further alienates society from policing, and society needs policing, policing needs society. So I think it really is detrimental to any sort of building trust and confidence. Officers are going to feel like they're being, or some officers anyway, not all, some obviously might even find this funny or amusing, but the majority, I think, and we'll talk about the majority I think will find it offensive and demeaning, and will almost think that society thinks less of them because of the job they're doing. And there's a huge issue at the moment with retention in policing and recruitment into the service. So I think a title of a show like this, even though it is supposed to be a comedy, I don't think it helps at all. Society needs a professional, a respected and trusted police service. I don't think a title of a show like this is going to help that fact.
Graham, thanks for sharing your view. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Still to come here on the UK Tonight. Researchers want wild swimmers to help them trace pollution by studying their poo. We'll find out why. And we'll have the latest from Wimbledon, where the men's world #1, Yannick Sinner's run at the All England Club, has come to an end.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
I think it's a procession of the Taliban. Yes, it is. There's the white flag. We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people and putting them into trucks. You either live and recover, or you die.
Okay, so that's like a war.
That's the war, yes.
Yeah.
We help you understand the world with us.
For the past 24 hours, the soldiers have been attacked on a number of occasions. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We're being crushed.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world.
They were convinced the United States would become hooked. Well, they were right. An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster that's just landed in between us.
The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world.
It's not out of control, but the head we're drawn, it's so hot.
Welcome back. Coming up, why researchers want to analyse poo samples from wild swimmers. You want to hear about that. It's interesting, trust me. But first, Teddy is here with the sport. Follow that, Teddy.
Yeah, I was thinking about taking up wild swimming, but not now.
Yeah, well, you know, you might be surprised. You might be surprised. Let's talk about other sport, though, because, look, England don't play their match until 8 o'clock tomorrow night, our time, of course.
Yeah.
Keep with Sky News and the UK Tonight if you don't like football tomorrow. But there is another semi-final in the Euros on tonight between France and Spain. How's it going?
Yeah, not to rub it in, 'cause I know you're obviously busy at the moment, but it's an absolute corker so far in this one. Both multiple winners of the Euros at half-time. It is France 1, Spain 2 at the Allianz Arena, the Munich Arena in Munich. It was actually Randal Colomwani who put France in front with a header from Kylian Mbappe's cross. Mbappe's not wearing a mask tonight. His face has recovered from that injury, but Spain have come back. Lamine Yamal, at 16 years of age, become the youngest ever scorer at the Euros with a curled effort about 25 yards out. And then Dani Olmo in the 25th minute put Spain 2-1 up at half-time.
Wow. I mean, Spain have been the form team, but France, you know, they've always got something in the up their sleeves with Mbappe. Look, let's talk about England, because all eyes will be on Dortmund this time tomorrow, of course. Well, most eyes, not all. Lots of pressure on England. What's the boss, Gareth Southgate, been saying today?
Well, lots of stuff in the pre-match press conference, but the interesting word there, pressure, was something that Southgate talked about today, because you remember when he came on that sort of wave of euphoria back in 2017, Sam Allardyce was just there for a game. There's no expectation because England had been poor. But he says this time around they really felt a sense of expectation and pressure affecting the players more than ever, has perhaps inhibited them in the early performances, the stuttering games. Even though they won the group, England got through the penalty shootout in the last round against Switzerland. But the good news for Southgate, he says that all players trained today, and has suggested that Luke Shaw, which a lot of people see as a saviour down the left-hand side, won't start the match. You again referenced Kieran Trippier, thinks that Shaw may not be quite match fit. But I thought it was interesting this day and age, saying the players have felt that pressure. Presumably, that's because of even more prevalence of social media and a lot of those players having been brought up with that interface.
Let's go on to the tennis then.
Yeah, let's get on to it. Busy day in the tennis. We're back with you in a second with a full bulletin on that.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Welcome to the Red Bull Technology Campus. In 15 months' time, they will be running an engine in F1 that they have built here. Are they ready?
3 years ago, this place was a building site. Now it's a fully functioning power unit, design and manufacturing base.
Any of you guys from Mercedes before coming here? Yeah.
Of a total staff of approaching 500, 220 engineers and other staff were recruited from the Mercedes Brixworth engine operation. Okay. Ford have also contributed personnel and are already manufacturing parts and supplying test systems. They plan to do more. For Ford, it's a return to F1, having sold their Jaguar team to Red Bull in 2004. Their global head of motorsport performance is Mark Rushbrook.
Well, it was clear even then, right, the mission that you were already on before we joined, and complementing with, I think, the right resources that we can bring to it to carry it on. And Christian Hertrick and I are here about once every month, once every 6 weeks, and you can visibly see the improvements and the iterations of the hardware every time we're.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Thanks, Teddy. Before we go, just time to tell you about researchers who are trying to find wild swimmers because they want to test their poo. Contact with polluted water can cause a range of health issues, of course, but it can also expose people to bacteria which are becoming resistant to antibiotics. And the University of Exeter wants to use what they call the Poo Sticks project to work out where and why. Joining me now to talk about this is Professor Will Gaze, infectious diseases specialist at the University of Exeter. Rather you than me, tell us why it's important.
Well, as you say, there is increasing concern around pollution in our coastal and in our river waters. And we've got a long programme of research at the University of Exeter looking at coastal waters. And we did a study where we looked at surfers and they were more likely to carry antibiotic-resistant bacteria in their gut. And now with this increase in interest in wild swimming in fresh waters, we want to extend that into, with the Poo Sticks study, working rivers. So we're basically asking people to sign up to the study, which you can access through our website, which is blueadapt.eu/surveys. And then one of our researchers, Elitsa Penkova, will send you out a kit, a bit like a bowel screening kit, basically. So, and then you send that back, and we analyse that for the levels of resistant bacteria. And we compare that between people that are exposed and people that are unexposed. And this will help provide evidence for sort of, potentially informing policy about water quality issues in the future.
What's the hypothesis, Will, then? Is it that you think you're going to find more people who do more swimming in open water do build up a bit of resistance then?
Yeah, well, it's actually not the person that develops a resistance. It's that they become colonized by resistant bacteria, which, if you suffer an infection, we take antibiotics, don't we, if we get an infection that's caused by bacteria. But then if those bacteria acquire resistance, then the antibiotics no longer work. And this is one of the really big health problems of our time. At the moment, between 1 and 5 million people a year globally die of antibiotic-resistant infections, and it's anticipated to increase in the future. We're not saying that that swimming in rivers is going to be the main way that this occurs. Of course, we know that they're spreading within hospitals, within the community, through food even. But this is one obvious potential issue, that if we have sewage contaminated water and people are swimming in it, as is this increasing trend to do that, then we need to actually establish how vulnerable those individuals are to being exposed and colonized and potentially infected by these organisms.
Look, you're hopefully going to get a bit more attention now by talking to us about it, but so far, very quickly, Will, how have you been getting on with it?
So it's always a slight challenge. People are quite they're not that keen to give up their poo. We're all a bit sensitive about things like that. But we have done this before in our senior one, and so we really would hope that people will sign up and take part in our research.
Well, Will, despite my squeamishness, there's a serious message there, so I really appreciate you joining us. Good luck with it. Thank you. That is all from the UK Tonight for now. You can catch up on all the headlines on our webpage, highlights on the webpage. But up next, it's The World with Yalda Hakeem. I'll see you tomorrow night at 8 if you don't want to watch the football. See you then.